Due to their indecisive nature, they always leave decision-making to others. Business is definitely not their strength. They are slow workers, but of good quality. Daydreaming all afternoon sounds heavenly to them. This creative, esoteric group of people needs plenty of time alone in which to find their muse. They are generally most comfortable in their own minds, which other linear thinking people may have trouble deciphering. Individually, they would be a great craftsman or artisan or perhaps a teacher of New Age studies in any occupation that allows their mind the full range of freedom. If a relationship goes well, however, they won't hesitate to tell their associate what they need, and they can be quite insistent about it. Appearances are also important to them, which may explain why these folks can spend hours primping and posing. The goats of New Orleans. When I envision a goat of New Orleans, I envision a person who is able to buck the system, a person who gets entangled in life tragedies, a person who is able to stand up against a mountain and not be afraid of anything. But also envision a person who needs a lot of attention, a person who needs a relationship built with them. America went into this disaster with understanding. They responded with understanding. They responded through reaction with understanding. And that is a very profound thing to do, to respond to something with understanding. But when you respond to something, you should respond with experience. You should respond with the relationship in order to really be able to help the person that you really intend to help them. I've run across several incidences where organizations and different contractors who provide services for evacuees and different agencies who really poured out their heart and developing a relationship with the evacuees. And that's why some of them are so successful and some of them aren't. The Goats of New Orleans is not a book that is designed to bring anybody down. It's designed to empower Americans. It's designed to empower individuals. Because if you try to understand someone, the definition itself of understanding is difficult. It states it's difficult to understand the word understanding. So if you try to understand someone without developing a relationship, you're going to come to a conclusion that you may not be satisfied with. And so that leads me to the preface of the book that I want to kind of read a little bit through. How to relate to people who are different. This is a question posed to friends and family and coworkers. At first, the discussion was centered around the word understand. However, I have now come to understand that it is difficult to understand the word understand, thus coming to the conclusion that learning how to relate is more effective. If we use the term understanding as stated in the question above, it would be fair to ask, what is understanding? It is an abstract thing. It is a brain pattern or rule. Is it a brain pattern or rule? Whatever definition is proposed, we can still ask, how is it that we understand the things that are featured in the definition of understanding? It is more convenient to use an operational or behavioral definition. We can say that somebody who reacts appropriately to X understands X. For example, I understand French if I correctly obey commands given in that language. This approach, however, may not provide an adequate definition. A computer, for example, can easily be programmed to react appropriately to simple commands. For most people, this will be stretching the notion of understanding to claim that under an operational definition, such a computer understands the language. With the above in mind, it is easy to conclude that I need to change my way of thinking. Change it to a manner that would help me to begin relating to people who are different rather than trying to understand them. I have discovered through my experience and all the disasters that I've worked, the different environments that I've worked in, that all people want the same things that everyone else does. But the path to those goals may be different. How do we learn to relate? I believe there are two ways we can relate to people who are different, and they are respond through reaction. To respond is based on one's experience and training. The other way is to react, which is based on one's limited experience or training. Let's take this to a higher level. If you can imagine it happening, you should be prepared for it to happen. A friend who read this manuscript of this book said, it is like training your spiritual life. She went on to say that spiritual life is like a muscle and exercise is necessary. She continued with, it is good to use your imagination sometimes. She went on to say, you don't have to physically experience everything in life to have experience, because we're going to get enough reality anyway. I responded, if you react first to a situation, it is emotional. It was emotion. A lot of emotions go forth, or reaction is defined as anything that happens before a response. Chemical reaction, emotional reactions, a chain reaction. So, for example, if a little girl walked in here right now and she was dirty and unclean, how would a person react? One thing I know for sure I would react is I would say, well, hey, let me see what I could do to help her, because my emotions went out first. Similar to the disaster in Hurricane Katrina and Rita, Katrina particularly. America responded to the disaster. They responded to the pain. They responded to the cries. They responded to the deaths that were occurring. But they responded with the understanding that we will immediately go in there and recover the situation. Well, they never developed a relationship with the people of New Orleans. And so far, after a year later, the system has failed to recondition what they created. And now the contractors, those involved with trying to recover what the system originated, they have to take on that burden. And that is a big burden. And a lot of times they lose out financially because they take on that burden. One component of the book that I want to share that I mentioned earlier is what happened in 9/11 when Mayor Giuliano empowered New York and brought them together and brought America together to embrace the disaster from 9/11. He humbled himself. The entire state of New York was humbled. America embraced New York. Well, in New Orleans, after the disaster, Mayor Ray Nagin didn't do that. He didn't do it at all. He didn't do it at all. There was an opportunity, and there's still an opportunity for the administration, the CEO of that community, to humble itself and bring about a change in that community. And that leads me to the first chapter in the book, Nineveh Project. What I do believe that everything that occurs today, nothing at all happens without order. What I mean by that is there's nothing new under the sun. Everything has a reason for happening. And so the first chapter parallels what happened in one of the profound books that ever was written, the Bible, in Nineveh. When Jonah went to Nineveh, God had a relationship with him first. That's what that book is about. And we're not here to preach a sermon, but I'm here to follow along the parallels of how things happen and the effectiveness of all reality. Everything is relative. God first loved the people in Nineveh. He had a relationship with them first. He knew it was a wicked city. He knew they had witchcraft and they had all kinds of bars and they had, financial problems. He knew that. So he decided to send someone there. He wanted to develop a relationship with Jonah to send to Nineveh. And he went to Jonah and he convinced Jonah, after certain experiences Jonah had to go through, to go to Nineveh. And he went and he preached a sermon to get them to repent. And they did. Unfortunately, this hadn't happened for the city of New Orleans. And so because of the actions of the government in New Orleans and the people who have a goat mentality, entitled mentality, we all have to burden the responsibility of trying to recover that city. And America is really looking for a change, because not only do we have our own problems, we have to deal with those other problems, and we embrace those things. But now it's time for us to move on to big and better things. There was a story that I heard one time from a preacher in Bishop Noel Jones in California. And what he explained was Saul was chasing after David.